last time I was in this building was
2014.
4 years ago.
For the interview.
When we had interviews with, the selection panel had interviews with artists, and it was a bit like doing your oral exam for French. I was petrified, and they picked me. And what I think is really interesting about being picked was I don't always get these things. I think I probably get 1 in 10 because you don't know what you're getting. So for a commissioner, it's dangerous territory because people like to be sure that what they're getting, they know what it's going to look like. And I don't make just big inflatable bananas or big shiny balls. So I take an approach where I have ideas and it's ideas led. And the fallout of ideas can look very different from one thing to the next. But in these type of situations where there's so much consequence with the action of making an artwork in the public realm, it's really important that it's not my stylistic signature and there's none of my ego in it, and it's just for the people that use the space. So I would actually, I think that the way that the selection and the whole commissioning process has been run is amazing, because it's exactly the way it should be. It shouldn't be a competition with loads of pictures and you just pick which thing you want, because there's no social effect there. That's just like choosing some kind of monument or statue, or has no real effect. But to be given the opportunity to work with the landscape architects Gillespie's, and John, who's here now, John, there, who's not with Gillespie's anymore, but I've had probably about 7 weeks of conversations with that man over green stuff over the years. Where was I? Yeah, so it's important that it's ideas led, and it's almost like I felt the work that I was doing here was less of being an artist and more of being a sort of creative consultant that ruled things out. A researcher that spoke, because the campus is made of so many different communities, people that don't usually cross over, researchers, staff, patients, etc., etc., to talk to them and understand their perspectives and find a common ground. And we kept coming across this word, common ground. And if you think about a rural landscape hundreds of years ago, there was always common ground for people. Space was always set aside for people to use. So when you think about the phrase common ground, you also think about maybe a playing field, a communal space. And when you think about the words playing field, you think that playing fields probably have to be level. And when you think about the idea of level, you think about a shared space where people are even. So there's equilibrium, equality. So all these things just seem to naturally, as we were thinking through them, associate with each other. And I think the big, have we got pictures? Yeah, the big revelation really after days of discussing and talking and thinking was, this was a very early visualization. It looks a bit like the underworld city that they constructed in Jeff Wayne's rock opera War of the Worlds, which I'm sure none of you actually wanted. And when you look at that, it's just very hard and very grey. And when you think about in the interconnectedness of the world and the way we're part of this organism, and this planet as an organism is this interconnected mass, what was it originally? It would just be green. The world doesn't start with grey. The world starts with green. So we just did that. We just reset our stereotypical, cliched image of what a campus would look like, and we just decided everything should be green, and we'd only put grey stuff where it had to be by law. That was kind of like which already is a very, it seems really simple, but it actually takes a long time and quite a lot of bravado and bravery to say we're going to do that, because it's not easy to do that. The other picture's much, much easier. I think so we were doing a public consultation at the same time to find out what people wanted. And as we were making these decisions, we realised, we got the data back from one of the public consultations, and 95% of people had used the word green in what they wanted. independently of us doing this thing. So this was like the icing on the cake, really. It really proved that. And these are the things that to be honest, we'd imagined that people would want, but there are some contradictions. So, for example, a place to see art and hear, a place to meet people, a place for solitude, they're at odds with each other because you can't have a busy place where there's stuff happening and have a place to be alone. So the site was sort of conceptually split into a clearing, which is the circle at the top there, and into gardens, which were smaller spaces for one or two people or solitary contemplation. Sounds a bit hippie when I say solitary contemplation. I didn't mean that. It's not hippie at all. So it's almost like in two parts, but they all merge together because of the aesthetic styling of the landscape. I think one of the other reasons, to be honest, if I've not said this before, but one of the other reasons probably why I felt like I was all right, I was qualified to make decisions and have ideas about this, and probably was picked, was because when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in hospital, like years and years. I was essentially socialised in a hospital with adults, not children. So it's why I'm exceptionally intelligent, because I'm a private tutor. But it did give me the perspective of being in an institution and socialised in a different way and cut off, and understanding that when you're, and I know that patients are only part of the campus, but it's an important part of the campus, because when you are stuck to a hospital bed and that is your home, and you're always in public space, there's never any private space, you need to escape that. And that is a big thing. And the only way you can escape when you're stationary is through your imagination. You imagineer your way out of harsh realities that you're in into other imagined possibilities, ways out. So thinking about that, I needed to find a sort of catalyst that you could project happy, imaginative thoughts into. And to fit with this whole rural landscape thematic. And I came across...
To move on.
Yeah, maybe we can go back in a bit. I came across the idea of tents. That sounds dead simple, doesn't it? So I imagine being a patient in the hospital looking down onto this green landscape, which was when I was in hospital and we'd have our beds wheeled outside, or we'd go outside for a look around. We had a car park, loads of people smoking, and some old bins, and that was about the top and bottom of it. And where I would have liked to have been in actuality would have been in a field or on a campsite, Cub Scout camp kind of idea. So I thought, well, we can't just put a load of tents up because they'll rot. So I started researching polyurethane resin, which is semi-transparent, so light can go through it and it can be coloured, and you can cast it in high detail moulds. So we started working with a company who's in Norfolk on casting tents. So we'd take a tent, we'd spray it with a fine super glue to make it go slightly hard, and then we'd take a mould from that and then turn the mould and lay the fiberglass in. A really time-consuming, difficult thing to make. So this is actually not solid, but this is a hard tent that you can lean on, and you could drop something on it, it just bounce off. It's just polyurethane. And as you can see here, the light that's inside comes through. This is just a 60-watt bulb. So I thought it would be really nice to have a sense of impromptu community in the landscape. So when you look down at the hospital, you see tents. Like people have actually individually, sort of idiosyncratically chosen to be there. And create their own sense of community. So in all, there's 5 tents, and they're spread out, some through the gardens. Here, I've got loads pointing. You can see up there. So there's some there, and then there's a large one in the clearing, which is just under this tree. I don't think it is under the tree. I think we've forgotten to put it on the... it's just under this tree here. And so the idea is that there'll be these sort of catalysts of, catalysts that would suggest or signify that people want to be here and they've chosen to be here. Am I missing anything before I go on to the next?
But just maybe the other elements, the planting, the
Oh
lighting.
yeah, so as well to give it this kind of signification of rural landscape, there's other elements that seem quite absurd and functionless, but they key you in to imagining that you're in this landscape, and they're things like there's a gate like this with some fence, but it doesn't fence anything off in the clearing. So you have to walk around it. There's a style information board. We were for a long time trying to get a post box like that I could design, but it's a collaboration too far, I think. And then
there's the activation.
Yeah. So this is really why I'm here now, because my job doesn't really end here. My job is because this space is about bringing people together and me not being the person who dictates what happens there, but sticks around to, when you throw a snowball, you only have to give it a little chuck and it just keeps going and gets bigger, and with the momentum and the weight, it will get bigger and bigger and bigger. I have to sort of chuck the snowball in a way. So my idea was originally that the clearing would be used for everyone, for events, but they would be self-initiated. So I think probably me talking to you about it is so you can go and talk to other people about it, so that this snowball can be thrown. And I envisaged things like bingo in a marquee, researchers versus patients rounders match on the green, tea tasting and cake baking, and it's all very Bake Off, isn't it? Very quintessential British landscape. Yoga retreat, Halloween party, fireworks, etc., etc., etc. So with it being a common ground, it has to be activated. I've had the idea to do one day a year, which would almost be like a national holiday for the campus, which would be called Intense Day, like intense, but intense, where people would come with their own tents, or their children would come with their own tents, and everyone would pitch a tent on the green, and then they would have an activity in the tent. So if you are part of the local ice hockey team, you would come there with all the trophies. Or I should be asking you, really. But my children have already decided the activity that they're doing. They're going to bring a tent and sell small model tents in the tent. She's good, very meta like their father. So the activation, how we do that, is an ongoing conversation.
And it's a core part of the thinking about how to use the budget as well, isn't it, to support that?
There's money set aside to do something that could be amazing, but I don't want to do something amazing for 1 year. I want to do something that is amazing that then carries itself into the future. So by setting a date, for example, where the same thing happens every year, or maybe setting a small council or a board that ensures that, or I don't know. But this is the big bit where we're at now.
Do you want to say anything more, Ryan, about the development of the tents and the process that your fabricators had to go through to
They had to be hung upside down by the legs with a paintbrush, with really smelly stuff and a mask, and it wasn't the easiest thing to make, to be honest.
It's taken
Gravity's not on your side when you're trying to make a tent inside out of polyurethane. You can't turn it up because it just drips on you. I mean, it took ages to get them to work like that. But they're at a point now where you can see every stitch on the seam on the outside, and I mean, they just look incredibly real. you really wouldn't know that they're not a hard matter.
Just to say that this is a photograph that I was able to take in July of this year, just after the development team had completed the initial landscaping for the area south of the guided bus. It was a beautiful July day, and I mean, it almost looks like a CGI. It was so, it's been so perfectly rendered. But that's in place now, and that's what we'll be able to go and see, minus a few leaves, kind of shortly after this. But we made a conscious decision with Ryan, actually, that even though the landscape, for kind of practical reasons, has had to be implemented in different stages, it was very important that the final layer of some of the art objects and some of the other bits of infrastructure were kind of brought in at the end, and so that in terms of the final steps, everything gets completed as a whole sort of piece by by March, April time, and the kind of events and activation that you're talking about, Ryan, can then help to launch the space in the kind of shortly after.
Summer's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Better than today.
No, I don't think it is. But I think it is a great move that at least this kind of south side is at least being opened now, and people are being able to pass through it. And of course, by the time we reach March, April, May, kind of Papworth will hopefully be open and operational, and there'll be much more, kind of open connectivity and connection to the site, so that we can all really start to use it.
Just want to say one thing about it being a research facility, research campus as well, is I always think that really good ideas come from getting out of your comfortable area, domain of the people that you, for me, I go to Formula One racing and I go to bingo and I read fly fishing magazines. I'm not interested in any of them, but it's important to know everything, a little bit about everything, and put yourself with people that you don't usually mix. And for me, that was really important about this, that it's the way that people intermingle and conversations are made, and it's a catalyst for that as well. So, yeah, to make this this day where people come together somehow, and to sort of nurture that and let that grow, is really important, I think.
Great. Thank you.